Everybody, welcome to the Randy Justice Show. Today's show, we're going to talk about winterizing your vehicles, getting them ready for winter. And today I've got Joseph Childrens, our shop foreman here at Knox Rising Complete Auto Care. And we just want to thank everyone for joining. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome, man. I'm glad to have you on here, and it's always a pleasure when we have guests on the show. And so we're going to talk about people winterizing their vehicles and what they should do because winter's right around the corner. We're in fall now, and what do you feel like the biggest thing is that people need to do to get their cars ready for winter?
Coolant.
I would totally agree with that. That's something that a lot of people don't realize. That your antifreeze coolant you should change every 2 years, and most people don't. And we've seen some. Oh my God, the horror stories we've seen with Dex Cool.
Right.
And I know that
Sludge.
you can attest to that. It's if you don't change Dex Cool regularly, what happens to the car?
Yeah, it'll overheat. It'll start leaking. It corrodes up the inside of the engine. It corrodes everything. The radiator. It corrodes the heater core. I mean,
And it sludges everything up.
sludges everything.
And I mean, I don't know how many vehicles now that we've had to, they'll come in here and they'll be so stopped up that we literally have to replace
everything.
the water pump, the heater core, the thermostat, and we have to flush the block. We have to flush everything out. And a lot of times we have to replace the lines and all the hoses too because they're so gunked up you can't get it out of them.
That's right.
And that reminds me of another one. Matter of fact, you guys had a vehicle. It was today, yesterday. It was this week. Today, that the gentleman. And this is something we can talk a little bit about. The gentleman had mixed coolant in there, and that's not a good thing. And once
Especially not with Dex.
well,
Don't
right.
mix
Once you
with
tell
Dex.
everybody what, well, he had put. It's my understanding he had put green and put Dex Cool in there, correct?
Yeah.
And what happens when that's done to a
On
vehicle?
those mixes, it actually makes the process of gunking up come faster. It's not a good thing, especially with Dex. If you mix any coolants with Dex, it's terrible. Dex is a terrible coolant anyway. I'm sorry, but it really is. But yeah, when you mix, you never want to mix coolants.
And Dex is used in most of your GM vehicles. I know it's used in some. It's also used in some Fords too, isn't
Fords
it? And
Not now, but they used to use it in Fords as well. Now
Yeah.
Ford has actually did good and went to a yellow coolant, which is still a oat coolant, which is organic acid base, but they're getting better.
but it's different than Dex Cool.
Yes.
Dex Coolant's the only one I've seen. I think you would agree that just becomes this gunky paste if it's not changed on a regular
right.
basis. Every
Regular
2
basis.
years is what's recommended, and most people that's something they just don't do to their car. And changing your coolant every 2 years is every bit as important as doing your oil change every 5,000 miles.
That's right.
But coolant's not the only thing people should think about winterizing. We were talking before we started the podcast. One thing that people don't think about during the summertime, there's a lot of people that will put water or a water ammonia mix in their washer fluid jug. And as we know, that when winter and temperatures drop below freezing,
Freezes.
bust the coolant
Yeah, busts
jug,
it, yeah.
and we've had to replace
Lines.
several of those too.
Yeah.
So it's very important for people to realize not only is your coolant very important, and I thought of another thing I want to talk about coolant, but on the washer fluid though, that's why you need to get a winter washer fluid that's good to negative 20 degrees.
At least, especially here in East
Yeah,
Tennessee.
we don't get extremely cold here, but we get cold enough. You get the winter blend here that's up to negative 20 degrees. You should be good on your washer fluid. But coolant, that's another thing I want to. Coolant's so important. There used to be, years ago, and not that many, man, 30 years ago, what did we have? We had green coolant, basically, is what we had.
That's it.
And now we have European violet, European blue. We have Asian green, Asian violet,
Asian pink.
Oh my God, we have so many, and so especially German cars. I think we've seen this the most. if you don't put the right color coolant that car calls for, what happens?
They overheat. A lot of them will overheat.
Yeah, and what's really weird is that I found even the dealer can't tell you why.
Yeah, right.
We've asked. Yeah. I mean, we've asked that question. Why if we put the the European blue and one that calls for European violet, does it overheat?
Yeah, right.
We don't know either. It's like, what do you mean you don't know? It's your car.
Yeah, right.
That makes no sense to me.
That's right.
Why that is. So that's the other thing I thought about coolant while we were talking about the subject. But another thing we see, just as summer and very high heat is hard on batteries, very cold temperatures just the same.
It's hard on batteries as well.
And so at Knox Horizon, though,
EVs.
Yep, that starts to say, I was going to ask, what is it that we do to every vehicle that comes in?
We test every vehicle. We test the battery, we test the alternator, and we test the starting system.
And I've been talking a lot. Matter of fact, we have an ad going on the radio right now where I tell people about the dreaded check engine light.
That's right.
And if it comes in, come see us instead of going to a parts store, because parts store is going to use a little $50 read-only scan tool that's going to give you a code or multiple codes, but it doesn't tell you what's causing those codes. And how many vehicles would you say that we found that had a ton of codes, check engine lights on, but it was due to a voltage problem because the battery was bad?
Most of the time it was the battery, yes.
So we fixed a lot of vehicles just by replacing the battery and erasing the codes, and they go away because it's very important today, voltage-wise, that especially modern cars have the correct voltage. And we were talking, it's been a while since we talked about this, but it's becoming even more relevant in the newer vehicles, especially like some Mercedes, BMWs, and stuff like that, because I think it was me and you that were talking. It was either Mercedes or BMW. And how many computers did you tell me was on one of the newest ones?
70, it's 70 something.
Oh my God.
Modules.
70 something computer modules in that car.
Yeah. And they all need at least 12 and a half volts to operate properly, or it'll set check engine lights. It'll shut them down or anything. So yeah,
and that's what people don't realize. You have a lot of old school guys out there that they've been used to for years working on their own vehicles. So they get one of these new vehicles and think they know what they're doing, and they have no clue because they've never dealt with anything that's got 70 computers on it, and it's just the modern conveniences we get from these things are great. But man, when they break, it can be a nightmare tracing down what it is, and so that's just something right there. Especially talking about winterizing, make sure your battery's checked. Make sure you know how many volts are in there, and that even goes into the fact of too. We can talk about your routine maintenance, your oil changes, and stuff. Because if you're not changing your oil every 5,000 miles. And now a lot of people will argue this, and a lot of dealers will say, oh, you don't have to change it but every 10,000 miles, or you don't have to change it this. Here's the thing. If everybody will read that fine print, because my Nissan Pathfinder says it's 10,000 miles or it's 5,000 miles, and you have to look, what's the difference? If I was doing nothing but interstate driving, it says, yes, I can change it every 10,000 miles. Because what people don't realize, the start and go driving of in-town driving is harder on a vehicle.
Idling too.
And idling and stuff, that's actually severe driving conditions is the way it's listed in your book. So mine tells me to change it every 5,000 miles. And I do that religiously because we've seen, oh my gosh, so many engines come in here that are gunked up that implode basically because people don't do their oil changes. And we had that Dodge Charger that comes to mind, and the one I'm talking about. And I had a long talk with that young man because he was going 15,000 plus miles between oil changes, and the engine was so gunked up. I know we had to replace the oil pump, we had to take the pan off, we had to do much stuff, and told him at the time, you've done damage to this engine, and down the road, even though we've done all this to try to get you by, it's probably going to, at some point, the engine's going to fail.
And it did.
And it did. And it did. And unfortunately, that's one where he blamed us, even though we had warned him it was going to happen. He was the one not maintaining the vehicle. So keeping your oil changes done and getting all the fluids checked is very important, especially with winter right around the corner.
Excessive moisture in your brake lines too.
Oh, that's a good one that people don't think about because for years nobody ever thought about changing their brake fluid and stuff. But that's something we see all the time that you can have very high moisture getting your brake lines, as well as you can get very acidic pH if you don't change that fluid. And right off the top of my head, what's the recommended interval for changing your brake fluid?
It's different on different manufacturers. So some of them say every what? I don't even know the number.
Would you say though, if somebody does that every couple of years too, they should be safe with what they're doing?
It's an inexpensive thing too to do to keep that maintenance,
to flush that brake fluid
peace
and
of mind and everything.
And we can actually look at the brake fluid. We can test that brake fluid to see if it has excess moisture or if the pH is off. Something that a lot of shops don't do. They don't even think about that. But I know if it gets too acidic, that it can start eating away at the seals and the caliper pistons, or even the rubber brake lines, or there's a whole lot of problems it can cause. And talking about that too, when we're talking about people bringing their car to a professional shop and getting work done. I mentioned before how, you have a lot of people out there who are used to working on their cars forever, and they just don't understand today's cars.
No.
And one that comes to my mind is we had a van in here a couple months ago that the guy decided to do his rear brake pads. And you remember the one I'm talking about. He did not know on this particular van, and a lot of vehicles are going to this, that you have to put the rear calipers, this is rear brakes, and you got to put the rear calipers with a professional scan tool into service mode before you can do them, before you can run the pistons back in. There's some out there that you have to use the scan tool to run the pistons back in. And this guy didn't, and if I remember he tried to force them back in without putting service. And what was it he destroyed on that?
He destroyed the ABS module because it fed pressure back through it and blowed the seals out on the ABS module.
Oh my gosh. So a repair that would have cost him maybe a couple $100 to start with if he brought it to us and let us do it, because he's trying to save money. So he thought, I'll go buy these brake pads and stuff for $40, $50 and save some money. End up costing him, if I remember, it was just shy of $2,000.
Yes.
To fix that mistake. So that's why I'm saying cars are not as simple as what they used to be.
No, not at all.
And that's why our guys go through constant training to learn everything on the newer cars and stuff. And we still work on older stuff too, which is sometimes a break because we don't have to we don't have to go through all the computers and stuff. But getting back to the whole thing, we're talking about winterizing and stuff right now, tires. Man, tires are something that people just I don't know what it is. We see so many cars come in here and people neglect their tires. It's just like oil changes is the life of your engine. Rotating your tires and proper alignment are the lifeblood of those tires to get as much mileage out of them as you can. And tires are expensive. Rubbers went through the roof.
It has.
And people just don't do it. So also making sure your tires are rotated, making sure the tire pressure is right. And a lot of people don't know this. I'm going to ask you because you know. So how do you determine what the proper tire pressure is for your car?
Look inside your door. There should be a placard inside your door that tells you the correct pressure on front and back and your spare.
Funny how many people don't know that. I run into people every day. I tell them, there's a sticker right inside your door jamb that shows you what your tire pressure is. Well, I never knew that. I just thought you put it to the maximum of what was on the tire. No. And I've watched some videos lately of people that have come into repair shops. Oh, my tire pressure sensor light's on. And they've got over 100 pounds of pressure in their tires. You're lucky it didn't blow out on you, but that's why it's messed up.
They just put them to 100%. It's good.
Yeah, it's just, oh my gosh, it just kind of kills me what people do because they don't really think about that. But tires, checking the tread depth too. The National Transportation Highway Safety Administration says that when your tires get down to 2/32 of an inch of tread, that they're finished. They're gone. You need new tires at that point. But we've seen some come in here that are so slick, you might as well put them on a racetrack.
Yeah, right. Drag slicks.
Exactly. Wiper blades. Oh, my gosh. How many cars do you get behind on the interstate that has rear wiper and you see the rubber hanging off of it
hanging
because
off of
nobody ever changes their wiper blades? But
Especially the rear.
oh my God, no! But especially with winter right around the corner, and snow and ice and that stuff, get good wiper blades to keep your windshield clean so you can see where you're going and all that. Faded headlights. Oh my gosh. We see a bunch of them. People have headlights that are so faded from all the debris and everything hitting them all the time. They get this film-like look up to them. And so, that makes them very dim, especially in some of these older cars where you can't see where you're going and it's not as bright. And so that's why here at Knox Horizon, we offer headlight restoration. We can make them look like new.
He does amazing too.
Justin does a great job at doing that. And we've restored several people's headlights, and everybody has just talked about that. I've had people come back and tell us, oh my gosh, I didn't know I couldn't see until y'all fixed them. And now it's kind of like if you go to the eye doctor and you don't know that you've needed glasses for a long time and you get them, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I can see now.
All the pretty colors.
And that's the same thing with restoring your headlights. And people just don't, for some reason, they don't think about that. They just keep going and don't realize how dim it is, especially night driving, but especially, again, with winter around the corner and we get in that winter weather. Headlights are something that's very, very important to make sure that you can see where you're going in that winter weather. Winterizing, again, this is just something you need to do, but this is something definitely, there's more strain on your vehicle in winter, especially if you're having to drive in snow, ice, in inclement weather. Transmission fluid. Nobody changes their transmission fluid.
Filters, nothing.
And as a general rule, it's kind of like we talked before, and I think I'm right in saying this, different manufacturers recommend different service intervals on transmissions. But what I found is if you change that fluid every 30,000 miles, you're going to be safe. You're going to keep that thing to where it should be. Especially CVT transmissions. Oh my gosh.
That's definitely 30,000 miles.
Yes.
If not before.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. But nobody ever changes them. Nobody reads their owner's manuals in their cars anymore because it plainly tells you what to do in there, but nobody reads them.
Nope, they just wait for it to go kaput, and then they're like, well, I guess.
And what people don't understand on CVT transmissions, they're not rebuildable.
No.
Nissans are probably the worst. We see more of those than we do anything else where the transmission's just imploded itself and there's no way to fix it. Matter of fact, what's that code that comes up? Do you remember?
It's P17 Delta Echo, I think. That's the Judder code.
That code comes up, and plainly it says replace transmission. There is no fix for it other than that. That's what it is. And I don't care if you take it to Nissan, the independent shop, or whatever, everybody's going to tell you the same thing. And we know that it's a real inherent problem with people not changing their fluid and their CVTs, especially because it's when you call Nissan, we got 5 on the shelf.
All the time.
They're there. They're throwaway transmissions. They're one of the worst designs in the industry. If people don't understand how CVT transmission works, if you've ever seen a go-kart, that's the best way I can tell it. A go-kart, you've got a little flywheel back there on the transmission part that expands. The faster you get, it closes up. The slower you get. That's the way a CVT works.
Just a big metal belt instead of a rubber belt.
Yeah, just a big metal belt, and so horrible design for anything that's going to go, any distance at all. And but again, that's transmission fluid, especially. That's something else, especially when we're thinking about winter and just the extra stress on there, especially if we do have snow and ice and your tires are spinning and things are happening. You need to make sure your transmission's in good shape to do that. Is there anything else you can think of as far as winter goes?
It's basically, it's just maintenance in general. Rear end grease, front end grease, transfer case grease, just basically maintenance. Basically, you need to over-maintain your car for the winter, I think.
I think you're right. I would totally agree with that because we've seen so many cars fail in so many different areas, especially in wintertime.
Yeah.
But it's this doesn't just have to do with winter, but it has to do with all the time. But we see this a lot in winter too. People will maybe they didn't take care of their coolant. Maybe the mixture was off, so it didn't hold down to freezing temperatures, and so they get a busted radiator or a hose bust or something happens on there, and so the car starts to overheat, and they continue to drive it.
And then wonder why it cost them an engine most
Yeah.
of the time.
Yeah, because the first thing that's going to happen is the head gaskets go. So at the very minimum, you've got blowing head gaskets plus whatever started your problem to start with. And so now you're anywhere from, probably $3,000 up to, depending on the vehicle, if it needs a whole engine, $10, $12, $13,000 because nothing is cheap anymore. I mean, this economy sucks.
It does suck.
And parts are going up every day. They're just like everybody goes to the store now and knows your groceries. When you buy gas, everything's higher than it's been in forever.
And then the availability sucks too.
Oh my gosh, it does. There's parts that we've had to order and wait forever to get them, and people just don't realize that. And so that's the thing I would say too: maintain your vehicle. Make sure it's ready for winter. At Winterizing Complete Auto Care at 4701 Clinton Highway here in Knoxville, make an appointment. You can make it online at Winterizing.com. You can give us a call at 865-219-6999, and we'll be glad to get your car in. And we'll check all those fluids, check your tires, check everything out to make sure that everything's ready for winter. Something we hadn't talked about, but this is, I think, even more important than winter than it is the other time, is your brakes. People normally don't bring their car in for the brakes till something's grinding on it. So get your brake pads checked. Make sure that you got plenty of pad on there so you can stop if you need to. I think we've about covered all that.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess the thing we're trying to stress today is please, 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 just get your car checked out and everything. And for anybody that's listening to the podcast that lives in Knoxville or anywhere the surrounding areas, come into Winterizing. If you tell them that Randy and Joe sent you, you get 15% off.
That's awesome.
An oil change plus a free tire rotation. So don't forget that. Again, you can make an appointment at Winterizing.com. You can give us a call, 865-219-6999. And we just appreciate everybody that's tuned in to watch this and stuff. It's just, we felt like talking about winterizing vehicles was something that was very important. We talked about Winterizing, but I want to give a shout out, as I do every week. There are no sponsors on my channel. No one pays me to do this, but there's just things I believe in that I want to talk to people about. M-Body Healthcare, Dr. Mike and Melissa Major.
Awesome people.
I started to say half of our employees now go to them, and they are our primary care doctors. They're incredible. They're direct care medical facility, which means you pay a monthly membership. For regular people, it's $99 a month, and that covers 98% of your health care costs. You don't have to go through insurance, no more co-pays, and they can take care of you. And it's a couple of instances especially that saved some of our employees on hospital bills. Is one of our employees got an earring ripped out of their ear, completely ripped out. Instead of having to go to the ER and get the stitches and everything to fix that, they contacted Mike and Melissa, went to the office, got the same thing done, and avoided a $2,500, $3,000 ER bill.
And like an 8-hour wait.
Oh, yeah, an 8-hour wait. This was quick. And another one of our employees, actually, he's a smoker. And no offense against smokers, but, stop if you're doing it. It's bad for you. But he got cigarette ash in his eye. So he went, instead of having to go to the ER because his eye was hurting, he thought he got something in his eye. When we got there, they determined what happened. They put lidocaine in his eye, numbed it and everything, got him to where he can get well, and again, avoided that ER bill. As well as Mike and Melissa and M-Body Healthcare. They're very concerned about mental health too, and something they do is ketamine infusion therapy. It's something I've done I had some really bad anger issues as a former first responder, PTSD, anger issues, depression, and it's really helped me. And I guess I would ask Joe, I was a bear at one time, wasn't I?
Yep, I
mean,
think
be
you
honest.
are.
And it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot better.
So that's the thing. Even my employees here have noticed that things have changed since I've been doing ketamine infusion therapy. So again, Embody Healthcare, visit them at embodyhealthcare.com. Look us up, knoxhorizon.com. Joe, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for
I
having me.
appreciate it. And until next week, I just want to thank everybody for joining in, and feel free to leave a comment below. Of course, as always, if you're new to the channel, I ask you to subscribe. If you like the video, hit that like button and feel free to share it with other people so they'll know what's going on. Anyway, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
A lot of fun.
Yes, sir.